This segment is brought to you by Les Stanford Cadillac Chevrolet in Dearborn, Michigan. Please visit lesstanford.com.
Welcome back to Inside the Pizza Oven. Joining us is Super Bowl winner Eddie Murray. So took you from Nova Scotia to Tulane, as we had talked about.
Yep.
What was that like? That's a long ways away.
It was a big.
New Orleans?
I know for me, I always tell the story. You know, coming from Victoria, British Columbia. So think of Seattle's weather. So it's cool. The winters aren't real cold. The summers aren't real hot. There's a lot of wind. There's a lot of drizzly kind of rain. That's kind of what that area is.
Yeah.
And then I remembered when I got asked to go down and take a recruiting trip. I remember getting off the plane. It had to be like at 8 o'clock at night. Get off the plane, and it was like 90 degrees and 90% humidity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe how hot and humid it can be down here.
Yeah.
And they always used to call me the crazy Canadian because I'd be, you know, I think I wore shorts for 4 years.
Yeah.
But it would get cool.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that cold. You know, and they're in like big heavy coats and gloves and hats, and I'm walking around with a t-shirt and shorts on, and it just didn't faze me. You know, it would get chilly. You know, you might have to, you know, put a coat on and stuff. But that was my biggest thing, was just the climate. But the people of New Orleans, the cuisine, French Quarter, Cajun food. I mean, it was all a great experience for me, and really thoroughly enjoyed it.
I read an interview with you probably about 15, 20 years ago. Other than obviously your wife and your daughter, the degree that you got from Tulane was one of your biggest accomplishments.
It really was, just because I was not a motivated student when I was in high school. My whole emphasis was, and a lot of it was just circumstance. With my father passing away when I was 14, those years in Victoria with my mother, my mother was not well educated herself, so I couldn't lean on her for help. And I didn't ask for help. So my thing was, I just always did the bare minimum, just to kind of get through the class, and didn't really learn any studying techniques and good habits. And so that was one of the things that Tulane afforded me. We had tutors that we could take advantage of. And I ended up having a fellow student. In fact, she was on the women's basketball team. Her and I became really good friends. And she taught me habits to study better. And some of them, you know, it took me a while to get. Some of them I was very frustrated with it. But she was always really helpful, and you know, trying to teach me some things, because she ended up being a doctor. She was extremely smart, and she goes, I wasn't this smart. I was taught these techniques too, but I was taught them like in middle school, and I had parents that were there, and they encouraged me, and I had you know, a better path. But you can learn these things if you just put some time into it. So I struggled. I always kept myself eligible, which was, to me, a big achievement. But when I was able to do it all in 4 years, you know, I always stayed in New Orleans. Went to summer school to help me with my workload during the football season. So I was taking enough credits to stay eligible, but I would always need more credits to graduate. And when I remember going to my counselor's office, you know, my senior year, and going into the spring semester, she said, well, Ed, you need normal credit at that time was a normal load was 4 credits. So she said, you need 6 credits to graduate. You know, do you plan on going to school after your year's over? Because now football was starting, you know, the combine and all the things with potentially pro football. And I said, look, give me the 6 credits, because I just don't know if I'll come back. And so I loaded myself up, and I got my degree. And I tell you, I remember being so proud of going down that aisleway and get my degree.
When did you realize your 4 years at Tulane that, hey, maybe the NFL is a possibility?
Well, again, you know, the normal thing now is, you know, when you're a senior, you know, it's, you know, there's no NFL Network back in 1979, 80, right? So the draft wasn't on TV, you know, all of those kinds of things. So I remember my sports information director would tell me, hey, Ed, you're getting some calls from some teams that they want to come and work you out. But I never went to like the Senior Bowl. They had the East-West Shrine Bowl at that time. And then, of course, the Combine. So I didn't get invited to anything. So there were other kickers and punters that went to those things. And Combine, I never went to it. And had some teams. Back then, they used to have a service called Bledsoe service, which was if you were a Bledsoe scout, you scouted for like 6 teams and had a region. And then they would have individual scouts from teams that would do it. So that's kind of how it was set up at that time. And I had a bunch of Bledsoe scouts come. I had the Detroit Lions come. And of all things, I had the New York Giants special teams coach in 1980, who was Bill Belichick.
Oh, man. He just left the Lions, too.
He had, right? So he was the special teams coach back in the late 70s and 80s at that time for the New York Giants. And he was very memorable because I got a call from the sports information director saying, hey, there's a coach from the Giants, wants to come work out. What time can you be here? I gave him a time. Showed up. And, so I'm in my stuff, all ready to kick. And he put me through like an hour of these agility drills. Like I would assume like you would go through for other positions. Yeah. And I remembered halfway through, I said, hey, coach, do you know I'm a kicker? Okay. Why am I doing these shuttle drills and I'm doing all these running stuff and jumping and he goes, no, I know you're a kicker. And so we finished the workout and I was exhausted. I'm thinking I'm going out there to kick. And he says, do you have time tomorrow for me? I'd like to see you kick. So I'm going, okay, sure. I mean, that's what I do. So we made time again.
He tired you out.
Yeah.
And the next day, once you come kick
whatever his
sounds like
whatever his method was. So the following day, I kicked for him, and I did well. And he said, hey, what are you doing tonight? And I said, I've got nothing. I said, I'm sure I got some, classwork I need to do, or nothing really pending. He goes, what? And he goes, well, I would like to take you and your wife out to dinner. Well, now being a college student, anything off of campus food and any of those kinds of things was always a treat.
Absolutely.
So we said, sure, why not? Yeah. Okay. He goes, where do you live? And I told him where I live. And he goes, okay, I'll come by and I'll pick you up. So he picked us up, and he took us to the French Quarter. There's a family down there called the Brennan's family. They owned Commander's Palace. They owned all these really high-end, beautiful restaurants, phenomenal Creole cuisine and all kinds of stuff. And they owned another place called the Quarter Two Sisters in the French Quarter. And he took us to dinner there. So we're having a beautiful meal, and Coach Belichick is hardly talking to me. He's talking to my wife, asking her questions of, how you're liking college life and all that. And
so they're doing the whole process.
He's doing the whole thing. I mean, he is diving deep into this. So we had a wonderful dinner, and off we go. We fade out into the sunset. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up was now it's the day of the draft. So the first day, and so the sports information director told me, hey, look, just stay close to your phone. If the team will reach out to me, or if they don't have your number.
The NFL draft.
The NFL draft.
You were already drafted by.
I was already drafted by Hamilton.
Yeah.
About a month.
So you had an
before.
option there if you wanted.
I did. Yes, I did. And phone kept ringing now and again. It was always like a friend or something, or someone was calling from my wife. And I got a call, and it's Coach Belichick, and it's like the third round.
Wow.
And he said, hey, Ed, I just want to give you a call, because at that time, I think the Giants had the 5th pick, and the Lions had the 1st pick of the draft, because they took Billy as the 1st pick.
That's right.
So he said, hey, look, Coach Parcells just wanted me to get you on the phone and say, we're going to make you our 4th round pick. Just going to give you a heads up.
Wow.
I'm going, wow, okay, that's great. He said, now, things may change. I don't know what will happen, but he wanted me to give you a call. See if I had the right number, and here's how to get a hold of you. Yep, this is my number. So a period of time goes by, phone rings, it's Coach Belichick. He goes, Ed, I hate to tell you, we had a guy fall to us that we didn't expect,
Who was that player?
I don't know who it was.
Right,
You know, I can't
gotta look-
remember.
gotta
I
look
can't
that up
remember.
later. Yeah.
And he goes, so we're taking this guy as our pick. You're going to be our next round pick.
It's amazing that he called you, though.
Right.
You know?
So just kind of keep me on notice.
Yeah.
Next round comes around, he goes, Ed, same situation, right? So this happens. So at that time, the draft was 12 rounds, first 6 rounds the first day, the second 6, 7th through 12th is the next day. So they finished their picks. He calls me at the end of the draft on the first day. He says, Ed, Coach Parcells is not, he doesn't care who falls in his lap. You're going to be our 7th round pick. We want to let you know now, so you can maybe go out and have a nice meal and celebrate, and off you go. Well, I took his word up. My wife had a cousin, his name was Mike Rogers. He played for Hartford Whalers when they were in the World Hockey League. He ended up playing for the New York Rangers. He was a centerman, and he and his wife were in town from Calgary. So the 4 of us went to the French Quarter. We had a nice celebratory time.
Going to New York.
I'm going to New York. I'm going to be a Giant. So get back rather late. I mean, I think we rolled in like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Wasn't feeling any pain. And all of a sudden the phone rings like around 7:30 my time, which is 8:30 East Coast time because we're on Central time.
Yeah.
So the draft's starting at 9 o'clock. And the voice, hi, I'm so-and-so from the Detroit Lions. Can you tell me what your stats were your senior year? And I'm in a fog. Okay, I'm trying to answer the question, and I'm going, I'm a Giant. Why are the Lions calling me? So I give the stat, hang up. 5 minutes later, the phone rings again. It's someone else from the Lions asking me for some other stat.
Did the Lions end up drafting before the Giants?
They
or
had
did
the first
trade
pick.
up?
No, they had the first pick.
Okay, so they had the first pick
So I
of
had
the
the first
7th
pick
round.
of the second day.
Oh, I didn't realize back then that they did the draft
Well,
in 2
yeah,
days. I thought they did the whole thing.
No, they
Plus-
did it in 2 days.
Plus,
back
when
then.
when you were drafted, I think they had 12, 13, 14 rounds.
No, 12 rounds.
12 rounds.
They had 12. So
Now it's
first 6
7.
and then 6. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, so now we know what ends up happening.
Wow.
20 minutes later, the draft opens up, and the Lions make me their pick, the 7th round pick. And I get off the phone, and I'm going, God, I can't believe it, the Lions.
I know you go from.
I'm going, I'm a Giant, you know, like I was almost
over
going out
across the
buying
country.
Giant stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then about 20 minutes later, I get a call from Coach Belichick. And he says, "Hey Ed, congratulations. You know,
Oh, what a classy
you
guy.
deserve
Very
to be in
classy.
the league. You know, I just know you're going to come back to haunt me one day."
Yeah.
And now flip over to 2 years ago. The Lions play the Patriots in preseason. I think it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
They're playing in preseason. I happened to be on the sideline before the game with my wife and daughter, Cindy and Nicole, and I see Coach Belichick coming out of the tunnel out onto the field. And he's always very stoic. He'd never really kind of, and my daughter, Nicole, noticed him. Oh my God, Dad, there's Coach Belichick. And I look over, and I don't know what made me do this, but I kind of barged my way through a bunch of people
You
who were
haven't
at.
seen him.
And I haven't
since
seen him
the dinner.
since.
the
No,
dinner
I
with
saw him
your-
a couple of times playing
Okay.
against him and
Gotcha.
stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But you know, nothing, you know, substantial. So I kind of edge my way in between, make my way out on the white part of the sideline,
Yeah.
and I go, Coach Belichick, and he happens to turn, and he gets this big smile on his face, and he comes over, and he gives me a big hug, shakes my hand, and he goes, Eddie, do you remember I took you out to dinner at the Court of Two Sisters?
Amazing.
And I'm going, I cannot believe it's been what, like 40 years.
That's why he's great.
40 years,
That's why he's
he
great.
remembered exactly something to me of that thing.
Yeah.
And that's why he's Coach
It's amazing. I mean, he was here 2 years before you.
Yep.
You were still in Tulane. He was
Yes.
here for 1 year under the Italian coach, the Fasano.
Yeah, Rick Fasano.
And then he obviously went elsewhere. And, and then it was,
But I remembered I was in so much shock I could barely talk.
yeah.
You know, and we had some nice conversation. He was asking what I was doing and how things are going, and I didn't even. I was so in shock. I didn't even bring my wife and daughter out to meet him because my wife's gone. Oh, you're gonna bring me over? You
So
know?
even a star NFL player, you still get butterflies when you see.
Well, it was just because that comment took me back.
yeah,
I mean, it
yeah.
took me back to that.
Sure.
because I was going, God, I barely remembered the name of the restaurant,
Yeah.
let alone he did on an instant like that. You know,
And sometimes
so
you think back, if I was drafted by the Giants, I mean, the Giants
knows?
took off from there.
They did.
Won
Yeah,
2
they
Super Bowls.
won a
and-
couple
yeah,
Super Bowls
so,
from
and
there,
they
and
played
who
a lot
knows?
of big games. So
Yes,
that's that's Bill Belichick. And,
Yes,
and it was
absolutely.
funny actually this past Super Bowl to see him. Stick his fingers out with the rings when
Oh,
they were
sure,
booing him.
yes,
I'm
yeah.
like, and I said, that's a boss move, but it didn't seem like his personality. But
No.
I like that, you know. He's like,
Hey.
all right, go ahead, boo me, but here's my.
If you got it, flaunt it.
I don't know if he had all 7 rings on, but
Well, I think he did.
He's got he actually has 9 rings.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's amazing stuff.
It sure
so,
is. Yes.
So you came to the Lions 1980.
1980.
We know the story with the Giants and all that. It's ironic, we're in 2020 now,
Mm-hmm.
2020, and when you came here in 1980, I was a 9-year-old kid in 1979. Detroit sports were really bad in this town.
tough.
Every team was bad,
Yeah.
just like it is right now. And then came along Billy Sims and Steve Eiserman, Isaiah Thomas. And do you see that now? I mean, I don't know how much Detroit sports you watch, but these.
Well, it's hard not to. I mean, I'm a great supporter of all of our teams here.
I meant to say, I apologize. I meant to say, did you see that when you came to town? Like, wow, all these teams are pretty bad. The Wings.
Well, I was a big hockey fan. Like I said, even though I'm a Canadian, I can't skate.
Yeah.
I love watching the game, and I have a lot of very close friends that are hockey players during that era. And I remember going down to Joe Louis at that time, and you could buy a nosebleed and go down and sit by the glass.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no one there.
Yeah. The
And
dead wings they were referred to.
until Mr. Ilitch stepped forward and bought the team and changed all the marketing and changed all the things all around. And then, of course, with Mr. Davidson with the Pistons and drafting Isaiah Thomas, and then the consequential team that he ended up putting around them and having the great success that the Pistons had for a number of years with the Bad Boys.
Billy Sims, unfortunately, in
Yeah,
1984.
and then unfortunately with Billy having a career-ending injury like he had, and then of course with the Tigers, they win the World Series in 85, 86. And they had a great nucleus at that time with Sparky putting that team, and it just seemed like the Lions couldn't kind of ride their coattails and have some success. We were always
I always say if Billy Sims
in the
didn't get
weeds.
hurt, things might have been different, and maybe we never even see Barry Sanders. So maybe that
you never know.
Maybe that
Yeah.
whole chapter is different.
Yes.
But all these guys that came in, Steve Eiserman, Isaiah Thomas, guys you named, Joe Dumars, Dennis Rodman, Lance Parrish, all those guys. Were you friends with other guys from other sports?
Yeah, especially the hockey guys. I knew a lot of those.
Yeah, we're thinking back Johnny
John
Ogrodnik.
Grodnick, Bob Probert, and
Gerard Gallant was one of my
Sean
favorites.
Burr,
Sean Burr, wow.
I actually.
Tim Shovelday, I believe, was
Willie Huber was a really close friend of mine. He and I used to golf a lot. Mark Curtin, Paul Woods, Greg Steffen.
I didn't realize
Eddie
Paul
Mio was
Woods
one of my
actually
close
played for
friends.
the team.
Yeah.
When he calls the games, but I didn't realize he played for the team.
Yes, he did. Yeah. And so Reed Larson, all those guys all back then, I was really close with them. Again, they were all big golfers, and we were always out there and doing a lot of stuff. Joe Dumars and I shared the same agent with John Caponegro, who I was mentioning before. The Tigers, Dave Roseman is a very close friend of mine. Dan Petrie, Kirk Gibson, all of those guys all back in that era.
Joe Dumars is one of my personal favorites, Detroit.
Very classy
players.
guy, great player.
Yes,
Great
absolutely.
player.
And
Yes.
3 championships.
Absolutely.
As a general manager as well, too.
Yes.
Now, common theme I've been hearing from you through the whole interview is golf.
Yes.
Your passion for golf.
Absolutely.
How much golf are you doing?
Well, my wife thinks I do it all the time. I would like to do it a little bit more, but I'm very happy with it. I have a league of old cronies I've known for 30, 35 years, the Clausen League guys. We're out at Greystone on Tuesdays, and we have a great time bantering back and forth, and I've known them, and I've had a great relationship with all of the guys for the Clausen League out there, and playing as many Monday charity outings as I can to support some of the great causes that they have on Mondays to raise money through golf outings. And, I had my little bit of time. I played on that Celebrity Players Tour for a little bit and played the Tahoe event and some of the other events and stuff. Enjoyed that an awful lot.
It seemed like Rick Roden.
Rick Roden. It was kind of the Rick Roden Tour
Yeah,
at that time.
he won all the time.
Won everything. Yeah.
Really good golfer, huh?
Well, he broke the $1 million winnings.
Yeah.
When most of the first place winnings were like $10,000. So that's a lot of tournaments to get to
Yeah.
$1 million.
Absolutely.
And he was a phenomenal player. There was a lot of guys that were really good. I mean, you got Billy Joel Tolliver had won the
Yeah.
Tahoe event before. You got Aldo Greco, and another fellow
Yeah,
kicker,
kicker,
was
yeah.
also a really great player.
Did they team you up with an actor or another
I've
athlete?
been all kinds. I've had some great people. I actually played with Ernie Banks before he
wow.
passed away. I played with he and David Robinson
Oh, wow.
in a threesome at Barton Creek, and it was. I wish I had taken a picture because we didn't have phone cameras on our phones
Yeah.
back then, but. You know, regular golf bag, right? So you put your putter in, and the putter's near the top of the bag, and,
Yeah.
and the clubs are up, and the driver's up here.
Yeah.
Well, David Robinson's putter was like this far out of the bag, and his
Yeah.
driver was like almost the
Yeah, I was
top of the
gonna
roof.
ask you, he's 7 foot
'cause
tall.
He's 7 foot tall, but then the other thing that was crazy, they couldn't make grips big enough for him, so he had like foam rubber, and they were like a baseball bat because his hands were so big. It was hilarious. I mean, they looked like. This was so out of whack to see these clubs going down behind a golf cart and they're all sticking out of the top of the roof and all of that.
So
But,
a guy with his wingspan, could he drive it over 350 with?
his problem was trying to get it square.
Okay.
You know, he had all of the advantages of having great levers and having big swing path with his height and everything. And that he was early in his career. I don't know how he plays now, but at the time. He was struggling a little bit, and Ernie was older. I just loved hearing Ernie's Banks stories back at the
geez.
time. You know, let's play two and all
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
He was a classy individual, and enjoyed my time with him. But I've had a lot of guys that I've gotten to play with. I played with Emmett a couple of times in the Tahoe event together with him, and Steve Berline. Played with Bonnie Blair, the speed skater.
Yeah.
Her and her husband was the caddy. She was enjoyable to play. So it was a great experience.
So there's a couple of
to know that.
dollars on those skins over there when you
Yeah, I mean, it's always a little fun. I mean, my thing was I wasn't going to scare anybody for the lead. My thing was enjoyed the competition part. Enjoyed meeting the different people from different sports or whatever work they did, whether they were actor or entertainer. And my wife and I just used it as a 3-day vacation. It was
Yeah.
fun. All we needed to do was get there. Once we got there, they took care of everything else from there, and it was always really first class and
Great.
great venue to play, and had a great experience.
Yeah, great.
If you or your family is touched by autism, learn more about Fredi's Foundation at #PopTheTap at fredithepizzaman.com. That's FREDI, thepizzaman.com, or email fredithepizzaman@gmail.com.
So hey, let's go back in time. As
Sure.
you were 5 years old, you left Canada, you moved to England.
England, yeah.
And what was it like to be? You spent 10 years there.
I did.
10
yeah.
years.
My father just retired after 25 years in the Canadian Navy, and like I mentioned, he was English,
Yeah.
even though he was in the Canadian Navy because they were still part of the Commonwealth at that time. So moved the whole family, my brother Ken and sister Carol, and my mom and I, and so we moved to Portsmouth. And new country, new everything, new culture, all
Yeah.
of those types of things, and it was a great experience. You know, my dad was a huge soccer lover. He was prevalent as far as being a coach all the time. He always came to my games and was very involved in my sports stuff at that time, mostly soccer. He wasn't big into the rugby part of things, but he and I spent a lot of time. The local team we would go see would be Portsmouth Football Club, and would go to Fratton Park and watch games. And it was like he and I having our day, going to do things and stuff. And so it was a pretty neat experience, I know, for me at that time. But the only obstacles that I had at that time, I think it was around age of 7, I had an epileptic seizure at home. So I had a grand mal seizure, scared the life out of my family, and went in for testing, and for about, I would say about 5 or 6 years, I had numerous seizures over that period of time, and was dealing with epilepsy at that time. And of course, in the 60s, it was somewhat of a new thing. Dealing with it, I was on a lot of medications to help me with the preventing the seizures that I was having. Some years I would have, 6 to 8 to 9 seizures over the year. Always had a lot of follow-up stuff with them. My recollections of them were a lot of lack of memory. That was really the biggest thing. I would have a hard time. They would always ask me, what can you remember before you had what was the earliest thing you can remember of before you had the seizure? And sometimes it was, an hour before, and sometimes it could be days would be my next recollection, as well as now, what do you remember after the seizure? What's the first thing you can recall? So those things started to change as I got older. And it was, God rest her soul. My mom was always very, hovering, for lack of better words. And my dad's thing was, well, we're not going to change anything that's going on in his life. And I remember doctors stating to my parents, you really shouldn't have your child, doing any physical activity. You should just have him basically just kind of sit at home and not do anything. Yeah. And my dad didn't believe in that. He said, hey, look, this is something we're going to get through. If you're saying, the medications will help, then fine. We as a family, we're going to be there as much as we can if he has a episode, to help him get through it so he doesn't hurt himself. And swallowing a tongue and all those kinds of things they had to be conscious of. But my dad didn't change my schedule at all. He goes, go out and play soccer, go play rugby, go play cricket, go run around with all your friends and do your friend thing and be idiots with your neighborhood friends. And I can thank my mom and dad for that. And of all things, about two and a half years maybe before I left, before my father passed away, the doctors basically, I started kind of having less and less seizures, started weaning myself off of the doses.
You were about 12, 13 at the time?
Yeah, when they were kind of, they were leery mostly on the medication side. That they felt the medications were really preventing the seizures that I was having because they were becoming less and less. And my mother wasn't a big proponent in me being on medication, so she was always encouraging them, okay, can we cut the dosage, and they adhered to that every now and again. And I got to a point where I remembered the last appointment that we went to, they giving us medication, which was the lowest dosage I was on at that time, and they said, this will be the last prescription that you will take. So when he's finished, hopefully he's okay. And I never had another seizure since. Yeah. So it was about when I was 12, maybe 13 at the most, that I quit having seizures. And then, of all things, when my father passed away, my mother moved me to Canada. It was on my 15th birthday. We left on August 29th, 1970, to move to Victoria, British Columbia. And from then on, I've never had another episode at all.
I was 6 months old then at the time.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Always a great upbringing comes from two great parents, right? Even one great parent or two great parents.
Yeah, that military family.
Yeah.
There was a lot of yes sir, yes ma'am things. Even though there were still mom and dad, we called them mom and dad. Yeah. There was a lot of that. Be humble, be respectful. Yeah. Be kind, those real simple things, but they're hard to do.
You're taught it, and
it's hard to be humble. Yeah. It's hard to be kind, and it's hard to be respectful. Yeah. It's not easy. It's easy to say them. It's hard to do them. And
I'm not sure if you caught that when you were telling me the story. And I believe in fate. Your fate is placed.
Oh, absolutely.
Your fate is there.
Yes.
You said, is it Portsmouth? Now, you came to Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions started in
Portsmouth, Ohio. I know.
I caught that when you were talking.
Yeah,
so,
it is kind of strange.
What
There's
a,
a lot
what
of
a triangle
synergies
there. That's amazing.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eddie, thank you for sharing that story.
My pleasure.
Love hearing
Yes.
that. So let's transition to rapid fire. Rapid fire, just
Sure.
have a couple questions
Absolutely.
and just have
Let's do
some
it.
fun with it. So, if you were the commissioner, obviously you play football. So if you were the commissioner of the NFL, give me one thing that you would change.
Wow. It's funny with the tenure of what's going on in the NFL right now, with the collective bargaining agreement being up. I would love for the commissioner to put a little bit more emphasis on taking care of the alumni players, the people that paved the way for the phenomenal salaries and benefits that the players have now. I'd like to see players back in the 50s, even however far, whoever is alive, who put their time in to pave the way for these guys, to help them with their pensions and add more to the pension fund, and to have some medical benefits for some of these guys, because a lot of guys are really hurting out there, and I think they deserve it. Even way the guys before me, as well as my era of guys, I would like for there to be a little bit more emphasis on taking care of the older players.
Those guys, you speak of 50s, 60s, even 70s, maybe the 80s.
Yeah.
Those guys played football and worked other jobs in the off season.
We sure did.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
so
we did.
So you did as well.
Oh, I worked every off season. I played football.
Really?
I
Amazing.
always took a job. From 1980 all the way to 2000, I took a job every off season.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep.
Amazing. So, 2 names.
Yeah.
You had to pick one. Well, Barry Sanders or Steve Eisner?
Well, it's kind of hard not to go with with Barry, because I played with him.
Yeah.
And Stevie, I'm just an unbelievable fan. I mean, he came around with an organization at the right time, and they made the right decision to make him the captain at the age that he was.
Yeah.
Because he far exceeded what a captain should be in hockey. You know,
Yeah.
he's one of those few guys. You know, you think of Rocket Richard and of those era of people. Phil Esposito was captain, I believe, for Boston, and really taking the winged wheel under his wing, for lack of better words, and bringing them to the success that they had. He was phenomenal, but so was Barry. Barry
Two
did the
great
same
icons.
thing. He put the team on his back. He changed the makeup of the Detroit Lions. They became a little more respected at that time, and he was just a phenomenal teammate.
I give you 2 more names during your time when you're here with the Detroit Lions: Sparky Anderson, Chuck Daly.
Wow. You know, they were phenomenal leaders, put together a great nucleus of players, but they had the, you know, they had to make those substitutions, or they had to make those changes that they needed to make at certain times, whether it was a pitching change that Sparky had to do, or it was, you know, maybe putting someone else out in left or right field and changing the lineup a little bit.
Yeah.
And with Chuck Daly, and, you know, when do you put in Vinnie Johnson, the microwave, and, you know, when do you put in John Sally and Rodman, that may not have been the starters at that time, and picking up Mark Aguirre, that they did it, and then Adrian Dantley also coming in. It's tough.
It's not just about X's and O's.
No, it's not. You can have great players.
Managing egos.
It is, you know, and you had Isaiah here, and a great
Dennis
nucleus,
Rodman.
and Rodman and Mahorn and
Sally.
Bill Lambier and Sally. You know, you had Mark McGuire, and you had all these people that you could do, but it's like they say, you got to be a good team.
Yeah.
You can be great players, but be a great team is hard, and that's what takes a coach. And they were 2 great leaders of men, but also putting good teams together.
As a young kid, just watching the '84 Tigers, you think about Sparky Anderson. You talked about putting a player here, putting a player there. Today's sports, he third base alone, he probably plays 6, 7 guys there all year long. If they were to do that today in today's sports, that's where sports has changed. That I think people would be in uproars. Like, you're changing a different guy.
Doing?
He had Tommy Brookins there. He had Barbaro Garbe, Marty Castillo. I mean, he had guys there all. the kid that went to the Mets, Howard Johnson.
Yes.
So he had guys there. He had different, and they won.
Yep.
And they won. And
Yep.
it takes a special guy to.
Yeah.
You got great players, but to put a great team together.
Sure.
Those two guys.
Well,
excuse me.
in baseball, I don't know how many teams have gone. What they were 35-5.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Absolutely.
You know, how many teams do that now?
No, and they
Not too
kind of
many.
collapsed toward the end of the year,
Yeah,
but that 35-5 start helped them, and obviously
Yep.
the rest is history. So,
Sure.
yeah. The best duel in Detroit sports: Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, or Lou and Tram. When I say Lou and Tram, obviously Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker.
Oh boy. Again, I think Lou Whitaker needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. It was great seeing Tram get in.
They should have went in together.
They should have. They really should have.
20
It would have
years,
been
19
ideal.
years together.
Yeah, it would have been ideal. I mean, you just don't find that. And nowadays, sports, you know, because of the freedom to move and the money the way it is, and guys jump into different teams, you won't have that.
No.
Those guys were unbelievable together. They just they didn't need to say anything. They just needed to look at each other.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of chemistry on any playing field, court, diamond, ice, whatever it is, when you have that, it's pretty special. And those guys maybe are a little bit ahead of Isaiah and Joe Dumars.
I say it all the time that at least until he gets to the Hall of Fame, because I think I'm with you, he should be in the Hall of Fame. They should have a major league award named after Lou and Tram. Somehow a double play award every year. I don't know how they would manage that,
Yeah,
but I think
that would be interesting.
you know.
Yeah.
I just think, and the statue should be up
Yes.
there as well too.
Yes,
so.
absolutely.
The NFL is late. I'm sure they've always talked about this. Now they're talking about 17-game schedule, maybe 18-game schedule. What's
Yeah.
your thoughts on that? A guy that played 16-game
Well,
schedules.
I don't see the pushback as much as the other guys who are talking about it, because I think that the problem with football now is it's very diluted. You can't prepare the team to get ready for the beginning of the season like you used to.
Yeah, because
when I was in training camp, we
Yeah.
had 2-a-days for like a month.
Saginaw, right? Or
Well, at Oakland University.
yes.
So, you know, granted, that might be too much, but these guys are not ready, hit ready for the season. You can be in, like, I always use an example not only for myself, it's like pitchers and catchers. Why do pitchers and catchers go to camp earlier? Well, because the pitcher's got to throw and get their arm in shape.
Yep.
Then they got to get ready to go through the baseball part of everything. I had to be in great physical shape, but I had to also go out and kick footballs to get my leg in kicking shape. It's the same thing with football. You can be in great shape, you can run around, you'll be great in shorts and helmets, but you have to get all of the hitting out of the way. You got to get used to hitting each other, and that's taken away. And I understand the players are trying to protect themselves. I love the concussion protocols that they have. I love all of those things.
The game is bigger and faster.
It is bigger. These guys are bigger and faster when
Yeah.
I was playing.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I'm not saying they need to add more hitting, but I think they need to there needs to be more options for coaching staffs to have the ability to hit. And I don't think it would hurt the guys, as long as it's controlled a little bit more. But I think a little bit more contact from these guys would also give the coaching staff a better idea of how that player will play under hitting conditions.
They say that a lot about the offensive line. The offensive line can't get any continuity because they just cannot play
Right.
together. All you know, and then
Exactly.
when you have injuries throughout the season, you're always plugging in guys.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So to answer your question, I don't have a problem with the 17 games. I think there's some other issues.
They'll have to be compensated, obviously, the players.
Well, I mean, but they're also talking about there only being 3 preseason games. So in essence, you're still playing 20 games, or there's
Yeah.
still a 20-game allotment of games.
But
and
I
how
think-
you divide it up.
But I think what ends up happening there is, just from thinking outside, just from thinking from the outside, is that they may say, well, you're cutting a preseason game, but you're going to be making much more money playing
Because you're playing the 17th
regular game.
Yeah. So
So where do we
Because you
get-
get paid during the season.
Yes.
Yeah, you get preseason salary, but then your salary goes over 17 games.
Yeah.
So I mean, is it enough that you want to have, quote unquote, another game check, or is it you just divide your $1 million into 17 rather than 16?
Yeah.
So I think you're splitting hairs, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I
you
don't.
would know.
I don't think it should be that big of an issue. I understand, the additional games, and now they're talking about adding a different format for playoffs, and there being
17, yeah.
7 teams. So now there's like 3 wild card games now instead of
Yeah.
2, which it could make it intriguing that you now have more opportunities. There's now 2 more teams that can make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that would be good. But like I said, my hat's on and being an alumnus and being an older player, I would love to see more and more of the older guys get more of a bump in their pension to take care of these guys.
And if you're on Twitter, the running joke is adding another playoff team, the Lions have another chance. So,
well, that's too much of an easy
Yeah.
mark, but it would be good.
so now, obviously, on your kickoffs, is there a hit that, you have to go down there and cover kicks as well, too. Is there
Yeah.
a guy that's smacked you so hard that you never forget?
Well, of all things, I have 4 registered concussions, and they've all been on kickoff returns.
Yeah.
It's never been like I see a hit. It's more someone's coming from the side of me.
Yeah.
I don't notice them.
Yeah.
And it's more my head hitting the ground and not my head being hit by
And you played,
helmet to
when you
helmet.
played, it was AstroTurf.
Yeah,
and-
the turfs weren't the greatest, and
Yeah.
the equipment wasn't the greatest and stuff, and it was just not having my head on a swivel.
Yeah.
Those were the biggest kind of hits that I took. It was more not seeing someone coming from the side. I'm just kind of focusing on what's going on in front of me, and someone kind of ear holes me.
So last 2 questions for me as you speak of the kickoff. The XFL, I don't know how much of the XFL you watch, but you being a kicker,
Yeah.
I watched one game, and I noticed on the kickoffs where they would kick the ball up, but the players didn't move.
Right.
And it was funny, my wife was sitting with me and we're watching the game, and she says, man, that's kind of weird. How do you train these players that were taught the whole time through high school and the pros to move when the ball is kicked? Now you have to sit and wait. What do you think about that?
It's I was intrigued when I first saw it because they were, of course,
For safety?
going over some of the new rules that
Yeah.
they were implementing and some of the things they were trying out. And they're putting it in there for safety because now the speed of the collision will be less because they have less to run.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued with that
Yeah.
to see how that plays out for the year for the XFL. It's just really different to see, and then as well as the kicker has to kick it so far. If he doesn't, it's almost like the penalty if you kick the ball out of bounds. That they get the ball, I think it's on the 40 or 45. It's a huge penalty.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of emphasis that they get it down there as far as they can, also at the same time. So. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for the year. I'm not quite sure. I love the idea of it because it lessens the impact because
Yeah.
they don't have much time to run into each other. But we'll have to wait and see.
I'll be remiss if I don't ask you, and because with Detroit, and I have to ask you, the Lions are known for. You've been here for a long time. Jason Hansen was here for a long time.
Yeah.
Who was the field goal kicker before you?
Benny Ricardo.
Benny Ricardo.
Yes.
Was he for here a long time before?
I think Benny was here. He came in after Earl Mann. So I'm not sure.
Earl Mann,
Yeah,
okay.
Earl was here in the late 70s. I believe Benny was here for 2 years prior to me.
Yeah.
Because when I came in 80, he went to the New Orleans Saints and then went to Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
I think Benny played 6-7 years or so.
You're my first memories, 1979, and obviously you came. So last question for me is, obviously soccer player, NFL player, won the Super Bowl. If you were to pick an actor to play you, who would that person be?
Wow. You know how people say, "Oh, you look like someone."
Yeah.
So if for someone to look like me, I get a lot of people thinking I look like. God, I had his name, and all of a sudden, Officer and a Gentleman. Richard Gere.
Richard Gere. Yeah, absolutely.
People think
Yes.
I at a younger age, of course,
Yeah,
look
yeah.
like Richard Gere.
Yeah.
Now I don't know how well he would do at trying to kick field goals,
Yeah.
but I mean, he would be only because someone has mentioned that numerous times.
Well, Georgie Best wasn't an actor, but he'd probably play you great.
He would. He
Right?
would do really good on the kicking side of things.
Absolutely. Eddie, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
Your
It's my
childhood
honor.
memories, and now you sitting in my pizzeria and talking about life.
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
Speaking
All
of pizza,
Let's
let's
have a
dive
let's,
in, huh?
Let's have a slice.
All right.
Absolutely. All right.
all the best.
All the best.
Les Stanford Chevrolet Cadillac is a family-owned and operated full-line Chevrolet Cadillac dealership located in downtown Dearborn, Michigan. For the past 50 years, Les Stanford has been dedicated to excellent customer service in sales, service, and auto body repair. We have all the resources available to make a fantastic car buying and servicing experience. This includes a massive selection of Chevrolet, Cadillac, and certified pre-owned inventory to choose from, free loaner vehicles for service and collision center customers, and a finance source for every type of credit situation. Come experience the Les Stanford Chevrolet Cadillac difference today by visiting our showrooms in Dearborn, Michigan, or shop online at lesstanford.com.